Hi everyone, I'm Robin Gregory from the Northern Integrated Family Violence Services team, and I'd like to start by acknowledging that we are recording this interview on the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and to any Aboriginal people who may be watching this interview. This is part of the service series overview series, and it's my pleasure today to welcome Vicki Cleghorn from Anglicare, who's going to talk to us about the family violence flexible support packages. So firstly, Vicki, could you tell us briefly what your service does and who can access your service?
Yeah, absolutely. So the family violence flexible support packages came out of the Family Violence Royal Commission, with the first packages being approved and distributed back in 2016. So there's 17 different providers across the state, with 2 different catchments within the North Metro region. So that is the Northeastern region, which is coordinated by myself and our team at Anglicare, and the Hume Moreland region, which is coordinated out of Uniting. Although the regions may have some variances with the application process, we generally operate very similar because we all come under the same government guidelines. So family violence flexible support packages were designed to provide a personalised and holistic approach to respond to victims, survivors of family violence. And although statistically a large portion of the clients that we deal with are women, the packages are available to a really diverse group of clients, from women, children, men, and the LGBTIQ community. Individual packages are available up to $10,000, with our average package being $3,000. So family violence support packages aim to assist clients who, as I said, who have experienced family violence by assisting them to access support, move out of crisis, stabilise and improve their safety and security, and well-being and independence while recovering and moving forward. So our packages have been put into place to complement other funding resources that are out there in the community already. So in saying that, as such, they can't be used to duplicate or replace other funding that is available already. But they are a great resource for case managers and support workers to source when no other funding options are available.
Terrific, thanks Vicki. And importantly, how do workers refer to your service, and what should workers be aware of when referring?
Workers can pick up an application form and guidelines from the Northern Integrated Family Violence website, or by contacting each of the regional catchments directly. So myself at Anglicare or the team at Uniting. As it is a criteria that clients must be case managed, I do tend to only deal with the case manager or support worker. So we do ask that that they do have the direct contact and not pass the contact details on to the client to try and apply directly, and that's purely just because of the volume of applications that we have come in. Our application forms in both regions have a step-by-step guideline on the process of how to apply. So they really are a fairly straightforward application to process. It's important to be aware that that clients do need a case management plan, and that case management plan does need to be current and active. It does also need to show and identify the family violence and show how the support needs being applied for can be met by accessing the funds within the package. It's important for workers to be aware that they and know that they have the time to put into a package to work with the client from application process right through to completion, because there is quite a bit of administrative work that goes along with a package once it's approved. You know, if there is a need for an initial consult, I think both regions do ask that that's put into an email, once again, just for the volume of applications we're receiving. And if we find that we can't respond via email, we'll generally pick up a phone and have a bit of a chat. If applications do include a PSI, a personal safety initiative component, so a safety and security measure, there is a need for a personal safety initiative consultation to take place before the application. And both regions have a two-part application form, and that's in place for the process of PSI to work in with that. It's important to note that we approve specific items. So once your funds are approved, they do need to be used on the items that have been approved within the package. So with that in mind, it's also important to consider that the items being requested are being selected in a really cost-effective manner. You know, I would love to just be able to approve the dream items for everybody, but unfortunately that's not reality within the package, because we do need to try to assist as many clients as we can throughout the financial year. So it is an expectation that all other funding other funding options have been taken into account and exhausted before applications are made. So that's another thing that case managers do need to take into account beforehand. And we do have a list of other options within our application form. So that's a good resource for that.
What type of things could be funded by the packages?
Yeah, well, these packages are not an emergency relief program. You know, as mentioned, the aim of the packages is to assist clients to move out of crisis, stabilise, and improve safety and wellbeing, and their independence. So with that in mind, there is a really broad range of support that can be received through these packages. And that can be from safety and security items like your security doors, your CCTV, your personal safety watches, things like that. And that's where we were saying a PSI, a personal safety initiative, comes into the application process. But then there's things like safety and secure housing, and that may be assisting them to move into emergency accommodation, or it may be something like, you know, paying a month's rent for them to get into a new home. And then there's suitable and stable housing, and that covers things like relocation costs to get them to a new home, or helping set it up. So maybe white goods, furnishings, things like that. We also look at health and wellbeing. There is also things like learning and educational costs that we consider, and that may be for either the client or the children. So you may be looking at TAFE courses for the client to help their prospects, or you might be looking at school fees, books and equipment that will aid with education. We also look at participation in the workforce. So we might assist with things like appropriate clothing, uniforms, equipment, once again, that will help in their workforce, or training costs to help them move into the workforce. We also do sometimes assist with legal costs and court costs, and we like to assist with social and community connection.
You know, we know demand on the service system is huge, and that, you know, as you say, there are, you know, limits to the amounts. So, and you've talked about the fact that people can apply again for a flexible support package. What else would you suggest if you're unable to assist?
There is a huge demand on the service, and that is why we do put into place our average packages of 3,000. That is so we can help as many people as we can, and we do try to not have situations where we can't assist at all unless it doesn't meet the criteria. But sometimes it's really difficult. You know, we know that it's harder to find suitable funding out there. So you know, it might mean, as I said before, for workers to work with the client and prioritise what items are are, you know, the absolute necessity at that moment, and apply for a smaller amount initially if we can't assist with kind of everything they need at that time, and then reapply in a different quarter, and once that package is totally closed. In closing, you know, if any of the case managers or support workers do have questions or concerns, you know, just contact us. We are there to help and support, and ideally we want to see the best outcome for the clients and their families.